All right, 9:14 is your time. Congress is still waiting for the Washington football team to turn over documents of its investigation. Former employees have long criticized the handling of the investigation. Joining us now is a former broadcast team employee, Megan Imbert. Good morning to you, Megan. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Megan, I know you have long been outspoken over the last few months about the Washington football team and all of the things that have happened just in the last few months alone. First off, just kind of walk us through how we got to this point from your perspective, with members of Congress now demanding that the NFL turn over these documents.
Sure. So in July of 2020, the Washington Post released pretty much a bombshell article around the culture of the organization, followed by subsequent articles, including the release of 2 explicit cheerleader videos that we believe were at the creation of owner Dan Snyder. From there, the Beth Wilkinson firm was hired with the league's oversight to do an investigation that lasted. We don't really know the full time because there has been lack of transparency, but from what we gather, over 150 people have participated in this investigation. And then there's been no transparency. There was no report produced. It was a verbal report between, updates with the Beth Wilkinson firm to Roger Goodell. And from there, without transparency, there really can't be accountability. So what's led us to this point is the NFL, Roger Goodell, has claimed that Dan Snyder has been held accountable, and we don't believe that to be the case. There was a $10 million charitable fine that was issued to the league, or to the team, I'm sorry. So at this point, we are hoping that Congress can get findings from Beth Wilkinson herself. Because right now it's obvious that there's conflicts of interest here, and the NFL now has completely mishandled this investigation.
Now, Megan, we know that Roger Goodell has mentioned that he's doing this in an attempt to protect some of the victims who would like to remain anonymous. What's your response to that?
It's completely false. There's a way to redact our names. There's a way to protect us. What he's doing is protecting himself. He's protecting the other owners. It's insulting to our intelligence. It's actually really... It's very sad. We feel kind of invisible at this point. And so we're virtually begging for Congress to help us in this matter, to take it seriously, because the NFL is supposed to be this environment that, other workplaces can look at as examples. They have such a massive following. And on top of that, young people, young boys, along with young women, they might end up wanting to work in this type of environment, and they're learning by example. So what we're trying to do here is really shed truth to light and make some positive, meaningful changes so other people are in a healthy workplace.
You mentioned accountability. Many have said the corruption runs so deep that it would almost have to, the organization itself would have to entirely change in terms of who's leading it. In your eyes, what does accountability look like?
First of all, we need to be able to see the findings of the report to really understand what has happened. And I'm talking about the Beth Wilkinson report. I believe that they've had to have produced something. I don't want a whitewashed NFL produced report provided to Congress. In order for there to really be that accountability, we need to really take a close look at what actually happened inside those walls and go from there. So without that transparency, it's very hard to say what accountability could look like. I personally don't believe that Dan Snyder or Tanya Snyder should be owning this football team. I'm also looking at how Roger Goodell has handled this matter and others. And leadership, I mean, it really emulates and can permeate how the team has performed along with the league in itself. So right now it's really following the dollars. There's obviously something else going on here that they really want to hide what we've discovered in this investigation.
Are you going to be at Sunday's game? And what do you plan on doing?
I haven't watched a game in a long time. I'll probably hang out with my dog, maybe see some friends, but football's not the same for years.
I ask you this because I believe I saw a poll on your Twitter asking people whether they were going to protest. I don't know if you were asking that seriously or not. And I know obviously a lot of people feel the same way you do. So are there any serious talks about that?
I think there are among the fans. I've been on a few podcasts with some of the fans, and I think the fans can really have some power here. We've obviously seen at games that the attendance at the stadium is dwindling. The performance of the team for years has really been a hard time for the fans. We have a really loyal fan base in DC, and I think if they were to show up peacefully and really show that they're upset, they want us to see justice as well, both outside of how the team has performed and what's obviously gone on behind the closed doors. So I would encourage fans to understand that every dollar you spend at those games is really lining the pockets of Dan Snyder in the NFL. So that's all they really care about. That's the language that they speak. So if people showed up in masses outside of FedEx Field peacefully, I want to be very clear. I think that there's power in that. I think we've seen it before. And now we're at an interesting point, I think, where the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter has kind of come together based on what was revealed in the Gruden email. So I think there's a lot of people, including players and former players, coaches, that should care about this as well.
We'll have to see how much louder the calls for accountability and transparency get moving forward, especially since there's not much movement when it comes to Congress requests for these documents. Former broadcast team employee Megan Imbert, appreciate you coming on this morning. Thank you.